For decades, coffee imports entered the United States largely duty-free, but now some of America's top trading partners are facing double-digit tariffs on their imports, including coffee. It's straining an industry that provides more than 1 million jobs in the US, and it's poised to strain prices too.
Something big just happened, and you'll probably feel it most clearly each morning. Right there in your hand, your usual cup of coffee. A new tariff from the White House, a strong reaction from Brazil, and a global coffee market thrown into turmoil. The result? Prices are jumping, supermarkets are scrambling, cafes are raising their eyebrows, and the everyday consumers, are left holding the bill. But this is not just about pricier coffee. It's a clear sign that pressure on prices, supply chains, and daily spending is spreading fast from offices in Washington to store shelves across the country. Still think your morning coffee is just a habit. It is not that simple anymore. The Trump administration has just slapped a 50% tariff on coffee imports from Brazil, a country that supplies about 35 to 40% of the coffee Americans drink. And right after the news broke, global Arabica coffee prices shot up, hitting $4.30 per pound in early 2025, twice as high as the same time last year. In the US, the price of roasted coffee exports has already jumped 11.8%, and instant coffee has gone up 12.4% from May 2024 to May 2025. According to forecasts from the Wall Street Journal, this new tariff could push retail coffee prices up by 15 to 20% in the near future. What does that mean for your wallet? A bag of coffee that used to cost $12 might soon cost $13.20 to $14.40 in just a few weeks. Small cafes are also feeling the pressure and may need to raise their prices or cut back on discounts. That familiar cup of morning coffee, it might just start making your wallet feel a little lighter. The International Coffee Organization, ICO, reports that global coffee prices actually dropped 11.8% in July 2025, down to 259.31 US cents per pound. That's lower than the month before, but still higher than July 2024. Yet, coffee prices in the US are still climbing. The June 2025 CPI shows that coffee prices in supermarkets rose 2.2%, helping push overall food prices up by 0.3%. Even though input costs are dropping, taxes, shipping, and high interest rates keep final prices high. For everyday shoppers, the difference is showing up in receipts. That same $12 bag of coffee might now ring up at $12.25 or $12.30. It may not sound like much, but if you drink coffee daily, those extra cents add up quickly. The US retail scene is feeling the heat from all sides. Tariffs, rising goods costs, expensive logistics, and high interest rates. Chains like Food Line and Stop & Shop, part of Ahold Delhaize, are pushing back against price hikes from big-name brands like Nivea and Heineken, trying to shield shoppers from sticker shock. In the middle of all this, the new US tariffs are expected to keep pushing coffee prices even higher, adding more weight to Americans already juggling rising living costs. Next time you go to the store, look closely. You might notice more store-brand items taking up space, while some well-known brands quietly disappear. A bag of laundry detergent might still be priced reasonably thanks to retailer strategies. But that cup of morning coffee, it could cost you an extra 50 cents to $1, a small increase. Yes, but enough to make some people rethink their daily habits.
We don't make a lot of money. Now, I can't absorb, if all of a sudden there's a 50% tariff on something or even a 25%, I can't absorb all of that as a family business.
If you think potatoes are only a farmer's concern, you might want to think again. In Canada, golden potato fields are shrinking. Contracts are being torn up, and cold storage facilities are filling with unsold seed potatoes. Meanwhile, in the United States, the price of potatoes and potato-based foods is quietly creeping upward. This is no small matter. Behind it lies an undercurrent from Canada, where truckloads of potatoes heading south to the US have fallen sharply, triggering changes that could reach right into our own kitchens. According to the latest figures, Canada's fresh potato exports to the United States have plunged by about 19%, largely due to import tariffs and shifts in trade policy. In contrast, exports of frozen potato products, especially frozen potatoes, have risen modestly by around 10%. In 2025, U.S. retail food prices are projected to rise nearly 3%, with the food-at-home category alone increasing by more than 2%. This means a 5-pound bag of potatoes, a little over 2 kilograms, that once cost American shoppers $3.50 could soon reach $3.80 to $4. For processed potato products like frozen French fries, prices may rise by several dozen cents per pack. That might seem small, but over the course of a year, it can add up to a noticeable expense for households. To reduce dependence on the U.S. market, Canada has signed a $1.6 billion Canadian dollars agreement with Asian partners. This is a significant move, as Canada is a member of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership (CPTPP). The pact allows Canadian processed potato exports to markets such as Japan, South Korea, and Indonesia without import tariffs. Still, the U.S. remains Canada's largest buyer. In 2021 to 2022, the U.S. accounted for 89% of Canada's French fry exports, roughly $1.7 billion US dollars, out of the total $1.9 billion US dollars. This underscores that expanding into Asian markets will take time, but it is an essential strategy to mitigate risks when the U.S. market fluctuates. On April 11, many Canadian processing plants cut contracts with farmers. In Manitoba, potato acreage has dropped by 10 to 20%. For a farmer cultivating 20 hectares, this reduction could mean losing tens of tons of potatoes and tens of thousands of dollars in income. Some contracts have even been canceled outright, leaving farmers with thousands of bags of seed potatoes in storage, or forcing them to sell off the crop for animal feed at much lower prices. The impact is not limited to growers. Jobs in transportation, packaging, and cold storage are also being cut. In Alberta, the picture is somewhat brighter. Large plants, such as the Coaldale facility, are investing in new value-added processing lines. If successful, this could create stable jobs for hundreds of local workers, from machine technicians to packaging staff. But that's a story for the near future. For now, many farm families are already tightening their budgets, knowing this year's harvest will be leaner.
Anybody in the supply chain hears about duties and tariffs or any other fees, they get very anxious about those fees being imposed.
We know here in Canada over the last number of weeks and months that Donald Trump is doing everything in his power to destroy our economy.
Picture this. You decide to fix up your kitchen, nothing major, just new wooden floors and a few cabinets. The contractor shows up, measures everything, nods in approval. But when you ask for a quote, he sighs and says, last week, probably around $5,000. This week, closer to $6,000. Wood prices are jumping every day. Sounds ridiculous. Not really. Somewhere far from your control. A new tax policy just got signed. A strong tweet was sent. A quick nod happened in Washington. And suddenly, supply chains start to shake. According to a March 2025 survey by the NAHB, new import tariffs have added an average of $9,200 to the cost of building a single home. The NAHB, or Wells Fargo Housing Market Index, has also dropped to 39, the lowest in 7 months. Investopedia reports that tariffs on building materials could hit as high as 34.5%, adding anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000 to the cost of constructing a single-family house. What does this mean for everyday folks? A house that was expected to cost $300,000 might now cost $309,200. Kitchen cabinets, doors, hardwood flooring, they all go up. A $5,000 kitchen set might now cost $5,500. Even if you are not building a house, rising material costs push up rental prices and home renovation expenses. That goal of finding a stable place to live, it just got a bit farther away. In February 2025, the NAHB, or Wells Fargo Index, dropped to 42, its lowest point in 5 months, due to worries about tariffs and mortgage rates hovering near 7%. By March, the index dipped even lower, to 39, the lowest in 7 months. At the same time, 71% of homebuilders reported that spring 2025 has been their slowest season since 2019. Why? Higher material costs and cautious buyers hesitating over steep prices and rising interest rates. This makes building or fixing a home harder to plan. Let's say you had a $20,000 budget to add a second floor. Now, you might be looking at $21,500 or even $22,000. If you are in the market to buy, the slowdown means fewer builders taking on projects, and material prices keep going up regardless. The U.S. plans to raise tariffs on softwood lumber from Canada from 14.5% to nearly 40%, including anti-subsidy taxes and a proposed 25% increase under the Trump administration. In response, Canada announced a support package for its lumber sector worth 1.2 billion Canadian dollars, around 870 million US dollars, including 700 million Canadian dollars in low-interest loans and 500 million Canadian dollars for product development and market expansion. Right away, US lumber futures jumped to $695 per 1,000 board feet, the highest in 3 years, and up 39% from the same time last year, even though home building demand is cooling. This translates to much higher wood-related costs. A framing set that used to cost $500 could now be $700. Home construction, renovations, even furniture builds are seeing big cost hikes. Many families are delaying plans or settling for cheaper materials they do not really like. And even with Canada's financial help for the industry, lumber prices show no sign of dropping. American consumers are the first to feel the squeeze.
We're selling it for like 40% more just because it's cost so much to get, right? And there's less in stock because people aren't buying this.
Imagine you're running a small auto body shop. Overnight, steel costs shoot up 6 to 9%. Parts orders stall, and workers are sent home early. Sounds absurd, right? But that's exactly what's happening in Detroit, where Canada's silent strike on procurement rules is rippling through U.S. automotive supply chains. A Michigan small business owner opens his shop, only to find this week's steel delivery is delayed again. He's heard friends in nearby towns having similar trouble. Why are steel shelves suddenly empty? And why do prices keep rising? Recently, the U.S. placed a 50% tariff on imported steel and aluminum from Canada. Using Section 232, Canada chose not to fight back with tariffs, but instead quietly changed government buying rules and increased environmental requirements, making it harder for U.S. buyers to get Canadian steel. This has left truckers, warehouse workers, and steel plant crews in cities like Detroit with less to do. Some are called in for fewer shifts. Others watch overtime hours disappear as prices inch upward. Families start to worry if everyday costs will soon follow. For those who rely on steady pay, this uncertainty makes planning for monthly bills more challenging, and conversations at dinner tables start to shift toward cost cutting. If this pattern stays over the next 2 months, an estimated 1,500 steelworkers and drivers in the Midwest may face reduced hours or temporary layoffs as factories scramble for supplies. Even small changes in work schedules can quickly add up, putting extra pressure on households and local businesses that depend on these industries to keep moving. Chaos. The summer brings an uneasy quiet to assembly plants, where once machines ran day and night. Now some lines sit idle waiting for steel shipments that do not arrive on schedule. Ford reports a jump of $2.5 billion in added costs just since the start of the year, driven by shortages and delays. Steel and aluminum prices have risen between 6 and 9% in the last few weeks, eating into company profits and slowing production across Michigan. Factory managers are forced to cut back shifts, while some suppliers consider temporary closures to wait out the shortage. For households depending on those jobs, a single missed paycheck can mean tough choices about groceries, medical bills, or summer repairs. If shortages continue for another month, buyers could see the sticker price for new vehicles go up by as much as $400 before fall. North. Canada is investing $1 billion Canadian dollars to upgrade its steel industry, focusing on electric arc furnaces and stricter environmental standards. The plan is to make steel cleaner and more attractive for markets like the EU. This push for green steel means Canadian exports could soon find new customers abroad, while U.S. producers may face more competition, especially as electric vehicle makers and large infrastructure projects demand lower carbon footprints. For now, U.S. buyers needing green certified steel may have fewer choices and higher costs. In the next 2 months, The price of certified green steel for U.S. construction or auto projects could climb by $45 per ton, adding pressure to project budgets and renovation plans.
The other problem is that the United States is starting to export less agricultural commodities, and that is a lot in part due to Mr. Trump's trade policies.
You spend months nurturing your crops, only to wake up one morning and realize your entire harvest suddenly has nowhere to go. Sounds ridiculous. But that's exactly what's happening across the American Midwest. As China unexpectedly cancels billions of dollars worth of American soybean orders, setting off a domino effect that threatens U.S. agriculture in the middle of a shifting global trade landscape. There were harvest seasons when Iowa and Illinois soybeans sailed confidently to China, sustaining farm families and small Midwest towns. But this week, everything changed. China abruptly canceled contracts for 2.4 million tons of U.S. soybeans. A $1.1 billion blow, soybean prices plunged 8.2% overnight. Storage bins are now 13% fuller. With no buyers, I've never seen my harvest just sit here with no idea what comes next, says a 53-year-old Iowa farmer. The region faces $470 million in lost revenue, impacting not just big farms, but also groceries, tuition, and savings for thousands of families. If the situation continues, average income for Midwest soybean households could drop another $1,200 to $1,800 this year, and about 4,500 seasonal jobs may vanish before the next harvest. The question lingers: who will buy the beans that have fed this land for generations? Not long ago, American soybeans were China's top choice, with Midwest shipments part of rural life. Now, after over $11 billion in Chinese-backed investment in Brazil's ports and railways, Brazil has taken over. Chinese buyers now pay $14 to $22 more per ton for reliable, long-term supply from Brazil, which provides 70% of China's soybean imports. For many American farmers, this shift isn't just about lost income, it's about being pushed aside in a changing world. This year, U.S. soybean exports to China may drop by up to 10 million tons, about 20%, forcing over 6,000 family farms to cut production or risk bankruptcy. Soybeans were once the ticket to a secure future. Now they are a question mark hanging over tomorrow. Is America still an agricultural powerhouse, or quietly becoming an outsider at the world's export table? It's not just soybeans under pressure corn. America's golden crop is feeling it too. U.S. corn exports to China have plunged 79% year on year. China also released 1 million more tons from its reserves to cut reliance on U.S. suppliers. For many Midwest farmers, once hopeful fields now bring worry. As corn prices drop and incomes shrink, tough decisions loom about next year's planning and keeping the family farm going. If this trend continues, U.S. corn prices may drop another 10 to 12% in the next 3 months, slashing profits for middle-aged farmers by $900 to $1,500 per household this year. Over 2,000 small farms might suspend operations or cut acreage by 15 to 20% next season. Some changes come quietly by the time you feel them. They're already woven into the fabric of everyday rural life. Every shipload of soybeans now carries more than a harvest. It represents America's global standing. As China and South American partners develop a new trading system, using less dollars and favoring long-term deals, the U.S. role is fading. Without quick investment in infrastructure and modernized supply chains, American farmers could lose their vital spot in the global market. If no major changes happen, U.S. soybean export value may drop another 15 to 20% next year, costing 8,000 to 1,000 jobs in soybean states. Someday we might look back and wonder, was there a time when America's strength was measured by the price of a bushel of soybeans?
With the looming threat of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs, a Buy Canadian movement has picked up across the country. You may have noticed it when you go into grocery stores or supply shops, a tag that tells you if the product you're about to pick up is made in Canada.
What if a simple change in consumer habits led to billions of dollars shifting hands between two close neighbors? If Canadian families suddenly stopped buying 6 everyday American products, would American companies even notice at first? Or would the real shock come months later as lost sales ripple through factories, small towns, and even online platforms? Imagine how daily routines in both countries might quietly transform if trusted brands slowly vanished from shopping carts. For many years, Americans saw Canada as a reliable partner in trade and daily life. But recently, as U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, energy, and autos reached new highs. Canadians have responded in a quietly powerful way, not with protests, but by simply turning away from certain U.S. products. 6 brands stand out: peanut butter, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Amazon, Netflix, Walmart house brands, and cars from Ford and GM. This is no longer just an economic move. It has become a cultural statement. We don't support a nation that punishes us. This shift began in the spring of 2025, and by summer, the effect was visible in store aisles across Ontario and British Columbia. For American workers, especially those in manufacturing and retail, each unsold jar or canceled order represents a lost hour of work. If the boycott continues, annual losses for you side. Companies could exceed $2 billion USD, putting pressure on jobs from the factory floor to logistics and marketing teams. Peanut butter, once a pantry staple, tells a striking story. Sales of Jif and Skippy, 2 iconic American brands, dropped 34% in just 1 quarter across Canada. Supermarkets have quickly replaced them with local alternatives like Kraft Canada and Nuts to You. Even Walmart, the retail giant, has found its U.S. made goods left untouched, as Canadian shoppers favor local products or brands from other countries. The message is clear for American producers and investors. Brand loyalty can vanish quickly when national pride is at stake. The ripple effect extends to farmers supplying peanuts, workers in packaging plants, and truck drivers moving goods north. If this trend continues, the U.S. peanut industry alone could see export revenues shrink by up to $150 million USD per year. Amazon's Canadian operation took a direct hit. In early July 2025, Amazon suspended services in Quebec, leading to around 700 job losses. While some customers shifted to Canadian platforms or European tech providers, the trust gap grew. Netflix, another household name, also saw subscription numbers fall, as families questioned supporting a U.S. brand in times of economic tension. The tech sector, often seen as immune to politics, is now facing unexpected headwinds. Investors and workers from software developers to warehouse staff could see income growth stall. Projections suggest U.S. e-commerce and streaming exports to Canada may drop by up to $500 million USD this year if consumer confidence does not rebound. Perhaps the most visible shift is in the auto market. After Canada imposed a 25% tariff on U.S. made cars in response to the Trump administration's moves, showroom traffic for Ford and GM sharply declined. Online searches for these brands in Canada plummeted, while orders were canceled and lots stood empty. Canadian drivers quickly switched to Korean and Japanese models like Hyundai, Toyota, and Honda. For small-town dealerships in Michigan and Ohio, every unsold car means tighter budgets and fewer jobs. Industry forecasts indicate U.S. auto exports to Canada could fall by over $2 billion USD in 2025, a sobering figure for anyone whose paycheck depends on cross-border sales.
Well, one gets up in the morning and you get up with fear because many of us can leave our house and we probably won't come back.
Changing course for the American food supply. Your local supermarket's bread shelf is suddenly stacked with loaves from Canada and cans of corn stamped product of Brazil. Sounds strange, but that's exactly what's happening across America's heartland. As U.S. farms slow down and shoppers face higher prices and fewer choices. Peon. Empty fields in Nebraska. There was a time when bread was a simple comfort, a warm loaf at dinner, a staple for busy mornings or late snacks. But this year in Nebraska, wheat fields are increasingly left empty, with wheat prices at a 5-year low of $5 per bushel and exports down $350 million this quarter. Unsold U.S. wheat is piling up. Even Canadian supermarkets now avoid product of U.S., leaving shelves short on basics like bread. For middle-aged families and retirees, each grocery trip brings new worries. Fewer choices, less freshness, and the uneasy sense that bread is slipping out of reach. As more land lies unused, supplies shrink. The facts are stark. Bread and bakery prices are set to rise 15%, adding $30 a month for families trying to keep their kitchens stocked. Even familiar foods can become precious. One policy change can be felt in every slice. Not long ago, California's fields fed millions with fresh greens. Now, a different scene. Produce wilting on the vine and harvest crews gone. Migrant worker visas have dropped 12%. Logistics costs are up 18%. And crops are left to rot. Texas floods and disaster response budget cuts make things worse. For retirees and families, finding vegetables can mean a 30-mile drive for lettuce or tomatoes. Each mile and dollar adds to the frustration. Soon, local produce prices may jump 20%, raising a typical family's weekly grocery bill by $25. That crisp salad now costs more and feels bittersweet, knowing how much is wasted. When American farms slow down, shockwaves ripple through the food chain. Processing plants and storage sites from Idaho to Kansas now run at half speed. And thousands of logistics and packaging workers are losing shifts. At the center is milk, a staple for families each morning. Small diners and markets, pressured by rising costs. Pass increases to customers. Bread and dairy prices have jumped 15%, costing households about $30 more monthly just for milk. Behind each gallon is more than a price. Small food businesses now spend $50 extra a month on logistics and packaging, while families see an extra $5 to $10 weekly on groceries. For many, pouring a glass of milk now feels more careful, more precious. Walk down a supermarket aisle in the Midwest these days and you might spot a quiet change. Canned corn from Brazil, filling in where American brands once stood, as Canada steps up agricultural exports. More than 1,500 containers of U.S. corn and soy have been rejected overseas this year, while Canadian funds are buying up tens of thousands of acres of U.S. farmland. For American families, especially those in their 40s and 50s, this is more than just a label change. The cost of staple foods, like canned corn, is now edging higher. Experts estimate an extra $50 a year just for basics. Not yet, the price isn't the only thing on their minds. There's a growing sense that the story behind their food is shifting, and that the future of the American harvest is suddenly less certain than ever before.